Dead Rising 2 is an open-world survival horror game developed by Blue Castle Games, who are now Capcom Vancouver, and was published by Capcom. The game was released in September of 2010 for PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Windows, with the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One re-release in September of 2016. This is footage from the PC version of the game on the highest settings. Dead Rising 2 follows former motocross star Chuck Green. Chuck is competing in a pay-per-view television zombie killing competition called Terror is Reality, in an attempt to get money to pay for his daughter Katie's medication. Things go wrong when the zombies are released on the adult playground of Fortune City. Chuck is framed for letting the zombies escape and must survive till the military arrives while trying to clear his name. Throughout Dead Rising 2, you will collect evidence to clear Chuck's name, save and escort survivors back to the safe house, defeat psychopaths, and find medication to keep your infected daughter from turning into a zombie. Much like Dead Rising 1, you have a limited time to complete all of these tasks. Adding to that, you must be at the safe house every morning to give your daughter medicine. Dead Rising 2 also features some departures from Dead Rising 1. This game is the first game in the series to have co-op. The entire game, barring the prologue, can be played with a friend. There's also a competitive online game mode based off the Terror is Reality pay-per-view show, but I don't have any footage of this because the player base is fairly dead. The camera mechanic from Dead Rising 1 has been nixed. Dead Rising 2 is the first game in the series to introduce combo weapons. While at a workbench, Chuck can combine 2 items to craft a new weapon. But is any of this good? Let's find out with the good. The main positive of Dead Rising 2 is that many quality of life features have been fixed over the first game. The guide arrow is now much more accurate. It smoothly transitions to pointing in the right direction, as opposed to the jerky motions it had in the first game. The watch has also been improved. It is now a digital watch with a timer, counting showing how long each minute lasts in-game, so you have a better idea of how quickly time moves in-game. The mission files also now have a small synopsis of what each mission entails, so you can get a better idea of how you're going to tackle each mission. Calls to the safe room can now be cut off and resumed at a later time. This is incredibly useful in psychopath encounters. You can also now move and shoot while carrying a firearm. Survivor AI has also been fixed from the first game. No longer do survivors get stuck on walls and objects. Survivors will also run through hordes of zombies quickly as opposed to running through, getting stuck, and getting grabbed and dying. The new co-op mode featured in Dead Rising 2 is a lot of fun. You and a friend can run through and kill zombies in funny ways, gamble, complete the missions as intended, defeat bosses. Anything you can do in the single player game you can do in co-op, and it's always more fun with a friend. The new combo weapons are fairly unique and can be pretty funny. Take for instance the IED, which is made by crafting nails with a propane tank. The overall base gameplay of grabbing a bunch of survivors and trying to keep them alive as they're going back to the safe room is still a great time. But there's some problems when compared to Dead Rising 1, so I think it's time to look at the bad. Movement feels odd compared to the first game. Things like jumping, and especially the jump kick, have this weird landing lag after them that makes them feel sluggish to use. Overall traversal of the zombie hordes is worse. By the end of Dead Rising 1, you had a fantastic repertoire of skill moves that allowed for various ways of dealing with zombie hordes. You could walk on their heads, jump off the walls, do a quick jump kick or a double lariat to get them out of your way. In Dead Rising 2, you still have skill moves, but they're less interesting and they feel less effective for taking out these zombies. In the later game hordes, I never felt like I had a good way of dealing with the zombies besides just walking around them outright. Often I would be grabbed by a zombie and stopped in my tracks. At this point in the game, I had more than enough health to deal with the damage the zombie was outputting, so it didn't make the game any more difficult, it was just frustrating. While on the topic of difficulty, perhaps my biggest problem with Dead Rising 2 is that the game's too damn easy. The combo weapons are completely overpowered. From the first area in the game, you have the ingredients to make a defiler and a lightsaber, in unlimited supply. These 2 weapons obliterate bosses, even in the late game. Adding to this, the game gives you too much time to do missions. In Dead Rising 1, there were many times where I really felt like the time crunch was on. I had very little time to do a lot of different things, and it required me to optimize my run over multiple playthroughs. In Dead Rising 2, I completed almost every mission on my first run, and I never felt as if I was running out of time. You would think with the added caveat of giving your daughter medication every day, that time management would be even harder. But sadly, this isn't the case. The story of Dead Rising 2 is decent, but what really bugs me is the atmosphere, tone, and exact mission parameters. Most of the survivor missions are lifted straight from Dead Rising 1 with little originality to them at all. A good amount of the psychopaths feel like rehashes, like the snipers. Many of the plot beats are too similar to the original Dead Rising for my liking. While the game still takes itself seriously tonally, it's upped the dark humor to zany humor. The first game stayed fairly grounded, but Dead Rising 2 opens with a crazy and bombastic zombie-killing game show. It feels like the Western developer tried to recreate the Japanese blend of one part horror and one part silly, and instead ended up dumping the whole truckload of silly into the mix. Overall, Dead Rising 2 is still an enjoyable game, especially with a friend. That being said, it lacks what made the first game a unique experience, and doesn't have the same challenge or replayability. Dead Rising 2 gets a bad mom out of 10.